Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. We've had a round of changes that have impacted PvP. We have the end of season announcement. We have now less than a month to earn these limited edition mounts, titles, and transmogs. So with this tier list today covering the ranged DPS in PvP, I wanted to give you my thoughts and opinions on which specs are going to have the highest likelihood of delivering you success towards those goals before they are gone forever. So without further ado, let's get started. The first specialization on the list is the Affliction Warlock. This specialization did receive some buffs moving into this most recent round of changes, but unfortunately, I do think that it's potentially still held back. Some compositions that I would recommend to you would be Affliction Warlock Shadow Priest, Affliction Warlock Moonkin, Affliction Warlock, and Mage. These types of double caster wizard cleaves focused on keeping enemies at a distance is going to be where you're going to see the most success. It does pack a lot of damage, but as you climb towards the higher end of the ladder, the mid-range even part of the ladder, where healers become more and more competent, that type of damage that they deal without the crowd control that other classes bring along with their burst damage is why that damage is going to be less impactful overall. But it can definitely still deliver. So for me at the moment, I'm feeling like Affliction's probably coming in onto the B tier. You could make it work, but it will be not exactly kind of the most meta pick at the moment, even despite the buffs. Arcane Mage, this specialization, unfortunately for me, even though you can run some really memey one-shot builds with it, you can substitute it out for fire in the compositions with things like Rogue and Healer. It's just not going to perform as well as fire. It's a lot easier to kill. You've only got really one school of magic to deal with, unlike fire. So it's honestly just not a lot going for Arcane at the moment. The way that you deal damage is definitely kind of awkward, especially when it comes to PvP. Not the best time to be an Arcane Mage here. You will struggle a lot. Like if you're a hipster Arcane Mage, you can go for it, but right now if you're going to play a mage and you're trying to get like the elite transmog, I would not recommend you try to do it as Arcane. I think you're going to run into more frustrations than not, so really tough to recommend it here on this list. Beast Mastery Hunter, this specialization, if paired with a Feral Druid and a Holy Priest, is going to skyrocket your rating very quickly. Definitely my most recommended spec for Hunter at the moment. If you're looking to climb and get these transmogs at the last minute, it's going to be coming in onto the A tier. Did receive some nerfs, trying to target its strengths against dot classes, but it's still going to remain very potent against dots, but still be squishy to the things that it was squishy to. So very good strengths, and also noticeable weaknesses prevent it from going onto S tier. S tier is where it's kind of not really got too many weaknesses, if any. But it is a solid spec if you're looking to kind of just zug down the ladder with the quick 3-2-1 rotation and just landing freezing traps out of stuns. You're going to see success with this specialization. Balanced Druid, I think this is a really underrated spec. I think it's actually on the upswing here, along with some other specs on this tier list in terms of their ability to climb. You can run Wizard Cleaves, play with melee DPS, Windwalkers, Demon Hunters. You have a lot of variety. I would recommend at this time that you play with a Demon Hunter and a healer, or a Demonology Warlock and a healer. I've actually seen this composition start to have some surprising amounts of success. You can even do Affliction Moonkin. It's still my favorite comp, even if it's not necessarily the strongest. I'd like to give it a go again, but if you're not the most proficient at it and you're kind of jumping into PvP to try and get maybe get that mount or elite transmog, it might be rough for you. For me, honestly, I'm giving it an A tier ranking, not S tier, because it does have notable weaknesses. Getting locked down and prevented on your cyclones or getting trained can be difficult to deal with at the moment, but I'm actually really enjoying where it's landed personally, and I'm starting to see more and more balanced druids prop up. Demonology Warlock, this specialization has gone from where Arcane Mage currently is for most of this expansion, pretty much all the way up here into S tier. Bringing in a more powerful Mortal Wounds effect has enabled double casters with this spec to really start to shine, and even other classes like Death Knights coming back into the fold with Death Knight Warlock and this type of archetype that had been missing from the game for a long time. It's the only Warlock spec that retains Soul Link, which is the major strength of it. It's going to be bolstering up its survivability, unlike the other specs of Warlock. That's their main weakness now, with the removal of demon armor. So definitely, I would say Demonology is the spec to go for here if you're looking for trying to climb on the ladder to get these transmog at the last minute. I'd recommend running Demonology Warlock, probably Shadow Priest, Elemental Shaman, Boomkin, really Frost Mage. You can really put anything with it, and you're going to see a lot of success. I'd say overall, the common consensus is maybe LE Demonology or Unholy Death Knight Demonology. It's kind of the go-to. Unholy Death Knight Demonology being probably the best cookie cutter one of just running in, getting a Tyrant, getting your grippy hands hands out and just pushing through with massive waves of damage, but I would put it onto the S tier currently. Destruction Warlock, this spec has kind of fallen off. I see it every once in a while, and I'm like, wait, why isn't he playing Demonology? And it actually kind of surprises me what it can get done. Unfortunately, you are very stationary. You're going to have a tough time with the amount of Death Knights and kind of cleave comps out there at the moment, similar to Affliction. But if you're pairing yourself up with something like an Outlaw Rogue that can bring in a lot of stuns for you, or a Frost Mage if you can get one that wants to play with you instead of Demonology, I guess Outlaw would rather play with Fire Mage too. So this is kind of like your second and third fiddle to a lot of other specs, so you may struggle to find some compositions, but I think you can make it work as kind of a hipster spec. I think it's in a way better spot than something like an Arcane Mage right now. So about middle of the pack, somewhere close in and around Affliction in the B tier. Elemental Shaman, this is another spec that's kind of on the rise in terms of its value, pairing up with Demonology Warlocks. I've seen it start to have a lot of success. You can run it with a Balanced Druid as well. I've seen a few of those popping up, but I'd say Demonology Ellie is going to be your go-to, or even Affliction Ellie if you really want to go back for that old school dot play style and you want to just try and spread pressure, but you're going to really need to be good at doing damage. You're going to want to run Necrolord, run the Ascendance proc Legendary. This is what's going to be just lobbing out tons of meatballs, which I'm sure many of you have seen. I've actually kind of been intrigued to try it myself here. I might give it a go after I finish my Enhancement Shaman Gladiator Challenge because it just looks like a lot of fun. For me, I think Elemental Shaman is onto the A tier here, maybe above Boomkin, maybe a little bit below BM Hunter, somewhere in the middle here of the A tier. Right now with those Wizard Cleaves, it's going to be a really good time, and that's going to be what you're looking to aim to climb with. Fire Mage, this is a really easy pick. I still think that this is the best spec in the game, even above Demonology. I think Outlaw, Fire Mage, Holy Priest is one of the most bulletproof compositions that you can run in the game. Just focus on pulling your enemies around in circles, sending stun combustions as much as possible, just maxing your damage while running laps around the arena. And that's where you're going to see the most success with Outlaw RMP. And I got to sneeze really badly here. RMP is CCing me, even me in my videos here, psychologically. But it's definitely a good spec, even though I don't see it, as represented as much as Ret Warrior. But if you run the Outlaw version of this comp, it's going to require a lot less practice with RMP specifically, just by focusing on running around the map in a circle away from your opponents and stun combusting. Frost Mage, this spec, it's kind of fallen off a little bit. I see Demonology Frost Mage having a lot of potential at the moment, but not so much that I'm really confident in putting it into A tier right now. I think you may struggle, but it's really good into the melee cleaves, and there's a lot of them. So if you're at the lower rank trying to get your transmog and you're just fighting warriors and rets all the time, then Frost Mage and getting yourself a Demonology Warlock will be a really good way of climbing. But I think the instant damage from Ellie's, instant damage from BM Hunters and Jungle, and even Moonkin can kind of overwhelm you based on how stationary you need to be at the moment. So it's going to be a little bit lower on my overall tier list, but that comp is definitely strong. Even though as a spec, finding other options might be tough, that comp specifically will work really well for you. Marksmanship Hunter, this spec is really good towards the lower end and mid-range parts of the ladder. You get insane burst damage from stealth. You can run Jungle Cleave. You can run with a Rogue, is what I most commonly see with this, but actually most recently I've seen a Shadow Priest Marksmanship Hunter at the high end of the ladder. Don't know if they're going to keep playing it. I would definitely recommend a Feral Druid as the #1 pick, and then maybe an Outlaw or Subtlety Rogue as the secondary pick. You're going to be limited on your comps. You're going to feel much more squishy than BM, but the amount of burst damage you can do is insane. It's definitely the best of the B tier, as I put it here in the middle of the tier list. And then finally, the Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest got some big buffs. It's going to help it a lot if you're running Demonology Shadow Priest, if you're focusing on kind of these Wizard Cleave compositions, or with a Rogue and a Shadow Priest. And I think you can see some success with it. I'd say that it's probably up into the lower end of the A tier right now, because it's got so much more defense than these specs down below, and still has access to some instant damage and instant CC that's valuable to its teammates. That puts it a cut above the other specs. And this is it. This is my little ranged DPS tier list update for the end of the season. Just wanted to give you a quick jot of compositions to look out for to try and play if you're trying to go after the limited edition mounts and stuff like that, and give you the best shot that you can get. Other than that, if you like the video, please hit the subscribe button. It'll just let you know when my videos go live. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.